Welcome to another round of MTGA tasting notes. This wine is one that quite literally brought me to tears. This was coming from a vintage very recently that had its challenges, and that was the 2020 vintage. Some of you may remember the fires that swept through the area. Very luckily enough, we were spared. Many people weren't. There were a lot of folks that weren't able to make wines, a lot of folks that had a lot of challenges and maybe only made a small fraction of the wine they normally did. For us, we only made about 30% of the wine that we normally would. And as we got through harvest and into the aging side of things, I wasn't sure if our wines were gonna be what I would want them to be. I wasn't sure if the smoke was gonna have a serious issue and cause problems and really affect the flavor of our wines. And kind of as is tradition, in January and into February the following year, I go back through and I taste through everything from the prior vintage. This is when I start to cut wines from the herd and say, all right, these barrels are gonna be some of our limited releases. This might be a single barrel wine. This might be something we do special for our wine club, whatever the case may be. And when I started tasting through our Merlot and kind of the couple of barrels I had earmarked to be candidates for our single barrel Merlot, I actually started crying. It was a weird feeling, but I could not believe that the wines were good and that they were just amazing. Like they were in an amazing spot. They were tasting really, really yummy. And I was so thankful that we were actually able to make the wines we were able to make from the 2020 vintage. And especially this guy, because our 2020 single barrel Merlot is one that it's probably our most sought after wine. It's one that many of you who have had our wines previously, you've come to know this wine and you've had it, and it's just something that sets the bar incredibly high in our program. This is the wine, realistically, we get the question, or I get the question all the time, like, what's your favorite wine that you make? It's kind of like picking your favorite kid, from what I understand. But if I had to pick one, this is it. The single barrel Merlot is something that is it's the special wine that I really get to make every year and say, how good can I make our Merlot? I get to cut a barrel from the herd. I get to see just where it's gonna go and really be this guiding hand to make the best wine that I can from a particular vintage. And since we've been making Merlot since day one, it's been our flagship forever. This wine has really kind of epitomized, what MTGA is and what we do, and stylistically where we want our wines to be year in and year out. And with the 2020 vintage being the challenge that it was, the fact that we were still able to make and bottle this wine is something that I am outrageously thankful for. I'm kind of at a loss for words. This is gonna be one of those tasting note videos where I'm probably gonna stumble a little bit because there's just so much emotion tied up in this wine and what it took to get it from grape to bottle. So right out of the gate here, it's got this really nice dark color to it. It definitely looks good, which always helps, right? And the flavors and the aromas are just beautiful. It's got the little bit of vanilla, a little bit of licorice. This was aged for 2 years in 100% new French oak. It was Gamba's G7 barrel that we use on this. It's actually an Italian barrel producer. They buy their wood from France, they get it over to Italy, age it, allow it to season, and then they build their barrels. I've been working with their barrels for some time. They are just beautiful for our Merlot program, specifically this single barrel Merlot here. And this reminds me of that January when I was tasting this wine for the first time after the harvest. So this would have been January of 2021. This would have been, as I'm recording this, about 2 years ago. We're recording this in early February of 2023. So it was 2 years ago that I tried this wine in barrel. I was like, holy shit, this is beautiful. I can't believe that we have this wine from such a challenging year, given the fires that swept through our area. So this is true like emotion in a glass right here. It's a little esoteric, a little like crazy, but man, there's no other way to describe it. And it is just, it's everything you could want. It's everything you could want from our single barrel program. It's got that depth, that richness. It has this, compared to our normal bottling, our Napa Valley Merlot with the white label, that tends to be a little bit more easygoing, a little bit more fruit driven, a little bit more kind of poppy, like it's got a little bit more of an edge to it. This has just got this big silkiness, rich, kind of mouth-filling flavor. It's just in a beautiful spot, absolutely beautiful spot. Definitely a lot darker, a lot richer. That you notice the barrel characteristics a lot more, that's for sure. Yeah, it's in a beautiful spot. I'm still just at a loss for words for the fact that we were able to make this wine and the way it's tasting right now. It's in a really beautiful spot. So happy that this wine is able to make its way out into the world. If you're a big red wine lover and typically more of a Cabernet or like red blend kind of person, this is a wine that you'd be safe diving into. It's something that's got all those nice, big, rich kind of characteristics, lots of structure. You could throw this up against like that nice, big, juicy ribeye steak and it's gonna do just fine. So if you're the big red wine lover, this is definitely where you wanna hang your hat. For those of you that might be into kind of lighter style wines, this is probably gonna be a little intense, but the beautiful thing about Merlot is that it does tend to be still very approachable. This still tends to have some plushness to it, and it's a wine that can kind of be the gateway to some of those bigger, bolder reds, and a great kind of stepping stone towards some of those really intense like Napa Cabernets and things of that nature. So this continues to be the Merlot that I throw into blind tastings, especially if there's a bunch of Cabernet involved, because I love bringing it as a ringer. It's something that nobody expects Merlot out of it. And for it to be 100% Merlot, just aged in that new oak and just have that density and that complexity, it's kind of a ringer. And that's why I love making this wine. It's why it is arguably my favorite wine to make, because it's something that's unexpected. It's using a variety, in this case Merlot, that just people know and they enjoy, but they don't know this kind of Merlot. And it's something really special, and I mean, just a very fun wine to make and get out into the world.